Welcome back to the show. Love has its ups and downs, but it brings so much to life, knowing that you have a partner for the good and the bad.
Jim McCormick's latest book is a celebration of just that, Story of a Marriage, 50 Years of Christmas Love Letters. Shares Jim and his late wife Marilyn's journey.
It offers a candid peek into what it takes for a marriage to last these trying times. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thrilled to be here.
So I would love to just jump right into it. What was it like putting a story of a marriage together?
Well, putting it together is a good way to put it, because this was not started as a book. In 1968, recall the year of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy's assassination, started out really bad, almost ended bad for me. On Christmas Eve, our first year of marriage, I realized that I had been so busy I hadn't gotten a decent present for my new wife. So after work, I thought I'd go out shopping. We were still in Detroit. We moved up north later that year, but we were still in Detroit. And I went out shopping to the nice stores, discovered they all closed at 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve, for the benefit of their staff, you know.
Of course.
Naturally.
But not for my benefit, apparently. I was panicked. I went to a Cunningham's drugstore, and I said, "What have you got that I can give to my new wife for our first Christmas? Something really nice." He said, "Drugstore?" He said, "Well," and there was a real sarcastic lady behind the counter, and she took one look at me and she said, "Well, I could sell you a box of cigars." I said, "Well,
That might not
come
work.
on. Do you have any, perfume or something?" So anyway, they had a crummy bottle of cheap perfume, So I thought, this is not good enough. So I went home and I thought, well, I'm going to do what I like to do best, right. So I sat down and I thought a lot, and I wrote what I considered a beautiful Christmas love letter to my wife. I said, "I hope she likes it." Well, she loved it so much she cried.
Oh.
And she said, "You have to write a letter like this to me every Christmas as long as we live." So I kind of gulped.
Oh.
And I thought,
You set yourself up for it.
yourself up for it.
right. But next December, she reminded me of my Christmas letter.
Yeah.
How are you coming? Yeah. So, and it was a big project. It usually took me a couple hours to sit down and think about the year and think, what do I want to write about? What do I have to say to Marilyn this Christmas? So,
You saved a ton of money on perfume
yeah, right.
with that effort.
Yeah.
So good.
Well,
so you've put how many years worth of letters?
Fortunately, she didn't need it. So,
How many years worth of letters then? You had a 50-year marriage?
50-year marriage. So I wrote her such a letter every Christmas, usually on Christmas Eve, close to it as possible, for 50 years. Wow. And she, well, actually, I tell you the truth, it was one year we weren't getting along too well.
Oh.
And it became a Valentine's Day letter.
Sometimes it takes just,
It does. It's the ebbs and flows
Few
of
extra
any
weeks.
relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there were a few Christmases when I just thought, if I wrote an honest letter right now, she wouldn't want to read it. That was just, we were arguing or something like that. The normal things that happen, of course, of a long marriage, any marriage. And so, anyway, I wrote her for 50, the letters. They're poetry, some of them are poetry. I learned how to write poetry, of course, of doing this. and I am a retired judge, so I had always written a lot, but they were not love letters.
This was more of a creative exercise.
Yes, definitely. Right. Hopefully, when judges write, it's not creative; it's factual.
Well, I want to ask you about the book a little bit more, but I know you brought a short paragraph or something that you wanted to read for us.
Well, let me have a
An
couple
excerpt, if you will.
Yeah, a couple real quickies. First one is a more typical. I call it, that letter, "Our meeting has elevated my life." Page 89, if I can find that. Yes. Dear Marilyn, this is Christmas 2002. So we had been married a long time. I just had a thought which I want to pass along to you at Christmas. How and why I happened to have this thought, I am not sure. It just came to me out of the blue as my mind was wandering during a trial. You understand, these were very confidential letters.
Yeah.
They were not supposed to be read by the public. In fact, they were, they're very, very personal and were not ever intended to be read by anyone's eyes but hers. You understand that?
Yeah.
So what made you decide then to go forward
share
with
it,
the project?
Yeah. Well, after she passed, and they found the letters. That's a story too. But she had hidden them in a box somewhere, and I didn't know. And when she was dying, I thought, oh my gosh, I have no idea where. She never told me. So she said, yeah, they're in a box up on a shelf way up by the ceiling in a certain bedroom, and I couldn't find them. So I thought, oh no. I'm never going to find them. My son came home from California and did a better job searching, and he found them, and people read them, and he said, they're great, you ought to put them together, and this deserves to be a book. So at first I didn't like the idea, because it was so confidential, but I was talked into doing it, and I'm really glad I did it. A little more on this letter. The thought that came out of the blue while I was daydreaming during a trial. The thought is this: whatever I am at this time in my life, I owe to you. The direction in which my life has gone is in great part attributable to your influence, your personality, your values, your lifestyle. Without you, my life would have gone in some unknown direction. I feel sure our meeting has elevated my life to a higher dimension. Thanks, sweetheart. Love and Merry Christmas. Jim. Of course, they all ended that way. Yeah.
Talk to us about the progression as you maybe pull those letters out and then you got to read them 50 years in a row. Do you see kind of the progression of your marriage? Are there talks of family or current events, or what's involved?
Well, there are 50 letters. The last one I wrote a month and a half after she died, because Christmas was coming up. And people said, you've been married 50 years, but the Christmas of the 50th years is coming up. So you've got to write her one last letter. So I did, and I think I really outdid myself. Of course, when you are grieving intensely, your feelings are so much on the surface.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Everything just poured out. It was, I must say, a pretty darn good letter. and so there are all kinds of letters. I did learn how to write poetry in the course of it, and I enjoyed doing that. I got a few halfway decent poems in there to her, love poems, and one I could read to you. It's real short, and I have. There were letters that were just tributes to her. How great she is, how much she has. But every letter is different. I find that every letter is different. Yeah. I was in a different mood. I'd sit down and I'd think, what am I going to say this year? And I didn't just start writing. I thought it out. Took some notes, and I'd say, okay, this is how I want this letter to go, and I dished it out. And I have to admit that there were 4 or 5 somewhere in the middle of our marriage where I don't know, we were both busy with the kids and life and things. Our personalities clashed a little bit, and I always said to her that and I said this repeatedly in my letters too in different ways, that yes, we have everything in common. We have the same values, the same interests, we enjoy the same friends, we're focused on our kids, all these things. But one thing we don't have in common is that we're very different personality-wise. and I think that's typical. People marry opposites, sort of, you know. But then you've got to deal with that opposite, and that's the problem, because, you know, that's going to, you're going to have some conflicts.
Yeah.
Well, you figured out how to make it work.
Yeah, you did.
Well, we figured out how to make it work, but there were letters in which I have to say there were 3 or 4 letters in there which I, among other things, was complaining.
In our last, we have about 30 seconds left
Yeah.
with you today, Jim. Where can people go and get a copy of this to explore this wonderful love story for themselves?
Well, of course, at your favorite bookstore. You know, nowadays, not that they have it on the shelf, but because there are only a limited number of books in any bookstore, but they can get it for you in 10 days.
Oh, yeah.
That's how it works, you know.
Good.
Almost any book, including mine, at any bookstore or on Amazon.com.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, online.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's available on both.
Well, Jim, thanks so much
Thank you
for
so much.
sharing it with us.
Jim.
We
Really
wish you the
appreciate
best.
you. Really appreciate
Good
it.
inspirational note too for
Oh, yeah.
folks out there. Another
yeah.
good gift idea for
Okay.
people too.
This case in point of it's the thought that counts, and this is all thought, all heart.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm talking at a couple of libraries this week, if I can mention that.
Really quickly in our last
real
couple
quick,
seconds, please.
Talking at the Traverse City Library this Wednesday, December 4th, 6 p.m., and at the Bel Air Library on Thursday, December 5, 2 p.m. If anybody wants to come and
Excellent.
talk to me about the book. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Jim McCormick, thank you,
gentlemen.
sir.
so much.
Yeah.
Great to have you with
We're
us.
going to make sure all the links you need to connect with Jim and come out to one of his readings. It's all going to be available on the show today on 9and10news.com.